This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
Welcome back to Couch Potatoes. This is episode number 76. I'm your host, Islaine, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ari, as usual.
And completely unempathetic as well.
And as you could hear by the chuckling in the background, we're also graced by the presence of Doone this week.
Hello.
And he's back for the next season of The Digital Frontier.
I was going to say back for revenge. That would have been better.
Revenge.
Yeah, he's avenging something. He'll let you know what that is later.
Yeah, when I come up with it.
As for that Digital Frontier topic, I think it's a topic that all gamers will definitely take some interest in, so stay tuned for that. But first, let's talk about what we've been playing. So, Doone, have you managed to get some games in the last, month or however long it's been?
Yeah, so over the holiday, I got to sit down with Axiom Verge. I think I mentioned this last time. But I played it some more because there's a lot of, secret places to find, and weapons and all that stuff. I just love that game.
Isn't it like a Metroidvania?
It is. It's a Metroidvania. It's really awesome. I actually love the story, even though it's not totally unique. But
Can I ask what defines a Metroidvania?
Side-scrolling, the ability to go back rather than just forward, and getting extra abilities that allow you to access new areas.
Yeah, that and the controller. So in the old, first Metroids, you couldn't move in 8 directions, and you couldn't control your character when you jumped in the air.
Oh, that's why they say the diagonal shooting and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And same for Castlevania. But once Super Castlevania and Super Metroid and all that came out, it was sort of the perfect combination, and it's been remembered ever since. So it's got all that. Anyway, I played that. I finally got Divinity Original Sin.
Oh, cool.
And played that, and I really hate that it took me so long to try it. I love that game.
Yeah, we were talking about it a little while ago. Apparently, Ari has it as well. I've had it since it first came out, but then also got the whatever it's called, the Enhanced Edition that they gave the patch for. Yeah. We were talking about doing some co-op, but we still haven't gotten around to doing it.
Yeah, well, actually, the 3 of us should. I know you can have 2.
Can you do 3 at once?
I assume so. Your party can be bigger than 2, so...
I want to say it's only 2, because you can have the option to have the extra 2 followers, or you can just go, there's a certain perk or whatever you can pick where it's just you and the other person.
Oh.
But I want to say it's only 2-player.
It might be. But I love that game. It's exactly the kind of RPG I get excited about. You can just wander through the world as a real character, reading books and finding strange things in the land, and I love that. So, and I played Darkest Dungeon this week. I haven't played it since the updates, so that was.
I haven't either.
Yeah, it's in full release now. I actually did a video the other day on it. Now that it's in full release,
I definitely noticed the differences, or some of the differences, picking it up again this week. So it has gotten a little better in the beginning, at least. So.
Yeah, not quite as difficult.
More difficult?
No, not quite as difficult. Oh. They toned it down a little bit, because I remember initially, you were having heart attacks left and right.
Yeah, it was kind of random what to prepare for in the dungeon. You couldn't really prepare. The dungeons were a little too random. That was my last experience with it. So if you once went to the same dungeon, and it was 10 rooms, and you found out you only needed 20 rations, and you tried to do that for the next one, it would be just way out of whack. There was just no consistency. So you couldn't prepare properly for a dungeon, because the same dungeon might need 2 meals or 20.
I think that was part of it, though. But anyway.
That's a big range. It's not between 5 and 10. It was pretty big. It seems to be better now, though. So that's what I've been playing.
Cool. Ari, what have you been up to?
Games, bro. Games.
Word.
Same as usual. Mini Metro, still doing the dailies. I'm actually getting in the top 10 now a couple of times. And like even when I'm 20th, like I did today, my score is like not far off those top 10 either. So I'm actually pretty good at that game now. I've been playing Dungeon Souls, still just a random kind of match every now and then. And I've been playing Eve.
How's Eve going?
Good. I haven't played much this week, but yeah, I get a bit of time in now and then and just random exploring, going through wormholes, finding relic and data sites and getting that sweet, sweet loot. And then trying to get back to base in like one piece without getting blown up by like random strangers.
Have you been potted yet?
Oh, a dozen times. Literally a dozen times.
What is getting potted?
That's when your ship gets blown up and your little pod containing you gets shot out in space.
Oh, okay.
And then they blow the pot.
Yeah, and then they blow you up as well. Well, a lot of the times, like, when that's happened, I've been in, like, where I shouldn't be, like, some nullsec organization's territory, and they automatically just suspect you're a spy, They don't want people going in their territory, looking around, seeing what's happening kind of stuff, so, yeah. But a couple of times it's been, like, in protected areas and low-sec, just gankers.
So I'm going to pick my subscription up and get out there with you.
Awesome.
I love that game. I always subscribe every year.
Yeah, apparently Scree said that you joined the same guild
Yeah, it's
thing.
a newbie-focused exploration corporation.
Which one?
Which is really weird. Signal Cartel.
Oh, yeah.
It's only been around for a year now. Well, it actually had its year birthday, like a couple of days ago. But no, it's really weird, like being in an organization in EVE that is against actual conflict with other players. Like that's one of their tenets. They don't get into conflict with other players.
Oh.
So what do you do
if
then?
you PvP someone else, that's against their terms, and you can be ejected from the group because they want to be seen as kind of like a, a safe organization. People don't attack them for that reason, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's a few organizations that are after cheap kills, kind of thing. So, yeah. Well, they're all about like exploring and like mapping wormholes, kind of thing. And a lot of people like that about them, like showing where a wormhole might go from null sec to high sec. Bad space to good space, those kind of things. Just easier ways to get around EVE, and that's what they kind of chart and document for people. And so people appreciate that. They get a few donations and all that kind of stuff for their work, and that's what you do.
Yeah, I miss Eve. I do need to resubscribe. I'll let you know.
Yep, cool. It's kind of funny seeing how much, like, there's quite a few people that get in touch with them as well to find certain wormholes.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why yet. Like, they just get asked for a certain numbered wormhole or a certain type of wormhole. And if you can find it, you get like $500 million, ISK, whatever it's called.
500 million.
Yeah, that's a lot, man. I'm up to 300 million now, so I'm doing okay.
Wait, from the corporation?
The individual looking for that wormhole pays it.
Ah. Oh, yeah, exploration. Yeah, it's lucrative.
Can be.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't found one of them yet, though, so...
It's worth getting potted for if you hit the jackpot.
Oh, like a few of my big hauls so far have been like 200 million worth, 100 million worth, get back to base.
Oh,
and that's huge when I'm flying like a ship that's worth 2 million. So,
yeah.
But yeah, pretty cool. I'm getting the hang of it.
Sounds good.
It does. I really need to play other games soon, though.
Other MMOs?
No, other games. Oh, I did play a little bit more of The Witcher, but not much.
That game I have no interest in trying it whatsoever. I don't know why, because I don't dislike it. I just something about it. Maybe I'm just getting old.
Yeah, you're getting old. Sorry.
I'm getting old.
It's one of the better RPGs out there right now.
Hey, have you tried the remember the adventure game, the one that was like the board game?
Yeah.
Is that still around? Because I actually thought that was pretty cool.
Dungeon Saga.
No. He's the Witcher. No, the Witcher.
The Witcher
adventure
game. I know it went to mobile, but I wasn't sure if they kept the
I haven't tried that.
If it's still out, you should try it. It's really cool.
Will do. And Izzy Poop, your turn.
I started playing Diablo 3 again because the new season started, and there was that 2.4 patch that added a new zone and expanded on some of the older zones. Once the season started, I was like gung-ho and I leveled a barbarian to 70 in like 2 days, and
Nice.
then promptly got killed. I was trying to finish the season journey, because this year, or this season, the season journey actually provides you with a full set of gear, a full set, just gear set, the greens, and
Wait, what do you mean by that?
the green set pieces that when you
They
combine them
give
and
you one
Yeah.
for making the season character?
No, you have to do the season journey, which was added last season.
So it's like a quest?
Kind of. It's like you have to complete certain things along the way. Mostly it's just shit you would already do, like level up the blacksmith to 12, and level up the other crafters to 12, and then like hit level 70, and then do a rift, and then get into a greater rift and do up to a certain point, and then kill certain bosses and stuff like that. So I had completed the first 3 chapters, and in the 4th chapter is where you get all of the extra goodies. Like there's like 2 or 3, there's 3 different goals that you have to complete that gives you what's called Hadrig's Gift, and that gives you 2 of the 6 set pieces that you will get to eventually have the full set. So I got 2 of those, so I had 4 total set pieces. The last one required you to kill one of the bosses on Torment 4. Well, I was already 70, I was already pretty well kitted out, I was doing pretty well, I already had like 20-some Paragon points, and I was like, okay, well, one of them required you to kill one of the named at Torment 2. So I did that. I did it easily. So I was like, yeah, Torment 4 can't be that much worse. Well, I went to the boss, and I started killing it, and then apparently if you don't kill it fast enough, there's this debuff called Out of Time, and it makes the enemy hit harder and also does damage over time to you no matter what you do. So I was doing fine. I got him down to like a quarter life, and then he kept spawning other ads, and then also was doing the damage over time, and it just ended up being too much for me to handle. I wasn't putting out enough DPS to kill him, and I died.
Which boss was it?
The Siege something monster.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that sucked. Lost him, and you only get the freebie Hadrig's Gifts once, so I still have 1 that I can get on a new character, but the other 2 gifts that I got are gone. But apparently all those set pieces still drop in the rifts and stuff, so I could still get the full set. And they also added in a thing called set dungeons, which are specifically made to challenge you when you're wearing a particular set. And I guess there's a different dungeon for every piece, or every set gear for each class. So there's tons of different dungeons there. But, yeah. So I ended up starting over with a Crusader, and I think I'm level 47 or 48 now at this point, but I haven't been grinding it out as much because I was a little disappointed with losing the first guy. Otherwise, I've been playing quite a bit of League because Season 6 started.
I had an itch to download that this week, but I haven't had time.
Yeah, it's been fun. I actually, a few weeks back, or a couple months ago, I did a show with a few other bloggers that are League players, and we talked about Season 6, because it was preseason at the time, and I ended up, one of the guys that started the Tough Luck Critic blog, him and I have been playing together quite a bit, and then there's another guy that I was playing with last season that has gotten back into it too. They're both in my guild, so we've been getting together and playing a couple games here and there each day, pretty much, and it's been going well, but we haven't started ranked yet, because they changed the champion select around. So instead of it being where you go into draft and you just say, like, this is what I want and hope that you get it, there's actually a new UI and everything. So before you even get into the selection, you get to pick 2 roles that you want to play as, and you're guaranteed to get one of those 2 roles. So you're never stuck in a role that you can't play.
How's the queue on that?
It's been fine, but I guess the people were saying in the higher ELO rankings, like Diamond or beyond that I guess the queue takes a while. But in my experience, it was fine. But for some reason, as soon as the ranked season started, which was a couple days ago, everybody on Reddit and stuff has been complaining that things weren't working that well, and then they disabled that queue for the time being. So I'm not sure when it's going to come back around. Because I was playing earlier today, and it still wasn't up. So, but it has improved things, because you don't have, the fights with people fighting over what role they want to play before you even start the game, which a lot of times costs you the game. So,
Kids.
One step towards less toxicity. at least.
Yeah, they had the queue system the last time I played, but it wasn't like you just described. You could just pick a role, but it took forever every time.
You're talking about Team Builder.
That one.
That's separate. This is like...
So they still have Team Builder?
Yes. And it still takes forever because I don't think people are playing it that often anymore. I think it kind of like got popular and then died off.
Uh-huh.
But this queue, it works for normals and for ranked. And it works essentially the same, but like your little icon pops up and then it shows underneath there's like 2 little buttons and you click on each one and then you can pick your role. So for me, I usually click top and then bot. Because I like playing tops or 80 carries or supports, whatever. So I'll pick those 2, and then I'm guaranteed one of those 2 choices once the match starts. And everyone else that's on your team essentially does the same thing, so everybody gets put into a role that they want to play, and you go from there. Works out pretty well.
Now, Ari, you don't... Have you tried League of Legends? I know you told us before.
Yeah, I have.
But you didn't like it.
It's okay.
That just seems like a game I would have thought was right up your alley.
See, I don't like toxicity. I like killing people, but not like being mean about it.
She also was playing on NA servers and had horrible ping, which is not conducive to doing well.
And it was on my laptop that was like stuttering all the time.
Alright, so that's a game the 3 of us can play. We should totally do it before the next episode.
I'm down.
All right.
I'm terrible, by the way, so we're not going to win. But I do like to play it.
Well, if nothing else, there's always ARAMs or Dominion to break things up, too.
Dominion's fun. I like Dominion.
I haven't played it in a long time, but I would assume that the queue on that is probably long as well.
It wasn't usually too bad. It's not instant, but I don't think I've ever waited longer than 10 minutes for it.
That's still long comparatively to the other queues.
Yeah, it's just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And the rounds are 20 minutes long, so it's not bad.
Yeah. And then lastly, I tried out the new, but old, and rather crappy Blade and Soul.
Why?
Mainly because all I've been reading about it and things that I've heard is that the PvP is amazing, and given the way the combat system works, I could see that. But it's also kind of has the same... It suffers from the same thing that like Arcade did, where you kind of have to get to a certain point in the game before PvP really becomes a thing. Because if you go into like the 1v1 duels, you're probably going to get matched up against people that are way better than you because they're higher level or whatever. So that was my initial draw. Otherwise, looking at it, it's not the kind of game that I would normally jump on. I just wanted to see what it was about, see if the PvP was any good. I never got far enough to even really play with it, so... Within the first 5 minutes, I was already like, dude, this game is annoying, because the interface is really busy, and there's just like a lot about it that I didn't like, and I could go into specifics, but that's not really important. What ended up happening is I was like, well, I want to play the PvP enough to where I'm going to just trudge through this crap, normal, generic, questy, grind, MMO bullshit that's just like every other game you've played. And then hopefully the PvP would be worth that time investment. And I got to level 10 and started asking around, like, where's the best place to PvP? And people were like, well, you just put on your... Because to flag yourself, you put on a particular...
faction outfit, yeah.
Yeah. So I would put that on and walk around and never see anybody. And I was just like, dude, I'm wasting my time. This is lame. So I uninstalled it.
Oh.
And people in my guild have been playing it, and some of them seem to be really into it and have gotten pretty far and say the PvP's great and blah, 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 but I just don't want to put the time in. That's why Crowfall, it seems so great to me, because it's centered around PvP, and there isn't quest grinds and other garbage, so it's...
Yeah, it's centered on laziness, I hear you.
It's not about being lazy, it's about, like...
It's centered on putting the content you want first and foremost.
Right, rather than...
I don't want to deal with, like... 100 hours of PvE bullshit to play what I want to play.
Exactly. So Blade and Soul didn't do anything.
Crowfall.
Well, it's just the same as, like, I wouldn't expect PvE players to go through, 100 hours of PvP to be able to do their content.
They wouldn't play it. They would not play it.
Exactly, they wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't.
They'd get ganked once or twice and be like, I'm done.
I don't know. There's still a lot of people in EVE, and that's pretty much what it is. Get killed as a noob a couple dozen times before you're...
And that's also a niche game, and has sustained itself as being that.
No, you guys are still right. It's pretty safe on the PvE side.
To answer your question about Crowfall, it is still doing some alpha type stuff right now. They're not expecting beta to be until late this year. And it's probably not going to release until next year.
Aw.
I was right, damn it. You didn't see my prediction post.
No, I guess not. But I mean, that was likely anyway. I mean, they just got funded last year, so it's not Star Citizen where we're only going to see a module and that's it next year.
Yeah. I need to go dig up some new articles on that.
I mean, I keep hearing about new things that they're popping in or talking about, but it all is just, segregated modules. There's no complete something put together even in an alpha state yet.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
But yeah, so you'll probably see around the blogosphere or on Twitter that a lot of people are playing Blade and Soul, but the people who... It's weird. The people who I see talking it up, I wouldn't have expected to like it, and the people who are talking trash on it are the people who I would have expected to like it.
Huh.
So it's kind of weird, but... And mostly people are just talking shit because there's really big boobs and whatnot, and you can create some weird-looking characters.
It's not just the boobs, though.
Big dicks, too?
No, it's just everything about their character design is just well past ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an anime.
Look they have on all their skins and shit. It's the completely narrow waist and, like, badunkadunk trunks.
Oh.
And just, like, the pathetic clothing, too. Jesus Christ.
It's stuff that prepubescent boys would like.
Stripperware.
It is stripperware. Well, maybe a high-class stripper, but a stripper nonetheless.
I think you see that a lot in Character Select, but in my experience running around the world, I didn't see a whole lot of that. Like, mostly everybody's pretty well covered up. But if that's the only reason why you won't play a game, then I think you're kind of dumb.
Yeah,
I'm not playing
you would. I don't know. That kind of thing could stop me from playing.
No, the thing is, usually with these kind of games, like Scarlet Blade, they need that hook to get people to actually play it in the first place.
Yeah.
But then you realize the gameplay's crap anyway.
Teenagers fall for that kind of shit. Full-grown adults don't go, oh, I'm going to play that game because there's boobs.
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah, you got that.
I had no draw. That didn't draw me at all. I was like, okay, PvP is good. That's all I care about. I could give a shit what the aesthetic is. It could be nothing but dudes with big dicks. Oh well, as long are we fighting with their dicks? That's cool too. As long as the PvP is good, I don't care.
That takes sword fighting to a whole new level.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd play that. I'd play that. Have you guys played
I already know where you're going with this. What was it? Hump your friends or some shit?
Mount your friends?
Yeah.
So
That
stupid.
is brilliant. That's brilliant. We need more games like that.
Well, there's a new one that just got through Greenlight. It's like the nut kicking simulator or something.
What is it?
I don't know what the name is, but it's a nut kicking simulator. Like you literally just kick the opponent in the nuts over and over again, and it's like pixel art. It's like for real.
I just think it's good that we stop like hiding that part of the male body as though it's like less presentable than breasts. I don't know. I think that's cool. So maybe new sword fighting games. We'll see.
Okay. Moving on. Dicks in the Digital Frontier.
How can we get more penises into our games? That's the Digital Frontier this month.
Perhaps we need physics changes there, I think.
Yeah, because packages are always like rock solid.
Would you play it, Ari?
Probably.
Of course we would. Of course we would. This Digital Frontier is a little slightly less about the social, although still pretty social, about saving our games. So last year I read a lot of articles about curation, the difficulties gamers have with sort of finding games on app stores and even on Steam these days. It's kind of overwhelming. and archiving our games, making old game libraries available to gamers today, people who maybe weren't born when they came out or were too young to play them, letting the community or other nonprofits have access to them and let us play them, for free. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, did you guys read any of the articles last year on Gama Sutra about archive.org?
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Some debate about whether companies should allow or copyrights, and nobody should be able to play these games without paying for them, and blah blah blah.
A lot of that stuff is still going through the courts, isn't it? With the ESA debating what games should be under copyright after they've shut down.
Oh, like MMOs?
Yeah, MMOs, but also multiplayer components of games.
I think that's one of the most contentious issues for gamers, because when an MMO goes offline, you paid for that game, you paid the subscription, and it is nothing. All of a sudden, it's nothing. You can't say that for Super Mario or Metroid or any of your old games, which you can still pull out of the closet and play it right now. So I do think that's a pretty big deal. Do you guys think the companies should be required to at least release the code for MMOs if they're not going to host it themselves?
Well, in some cases, they've been cool with it, like in the case of Project 1999. I know that SOE at the time had pretty much given their blessing, allowed that to happen, even though they were doing their own sort of progression servers.
Unfortunately, it's not their blessing to give with that property, because it's a registered trademark IP.
Well, either way, it's still running and people still play it.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the companies aren't going to go after them for just no money. It's not worth their time.
I don't know. Blizzard spends a lot, or at least used to spend a lot, to shut down emo servers.
That's because Blizzard's still working. WoW is still playable.
so is
Of
EQ.
course, but it's a different game, though. It's not like vanilla is like any of the games that are out now. It's pretty different. And they won't host vanilla, although give it another year or two, they're going to start talking about it.
Yeah, I say a CA progression server happening for WoW at some point.
I see it coming.
I think it would be a bigger money cash cow than their current subscriber base is, too.
I think it's the surest way to shut down emos. Not that I'm in support of that in the first place. I used to play on emo servers.
I know that that Warhammer one as well seems to be still gaining traction, and I've seen a couple people post about actually playing it. And
There's a Warhammer one?
yeah. I don't remember what the name is, but I'm sure you could find it through
Age
Google.
of Reckoning? No.
No, that's the original. But
Oh, you mean the new Warhammer game?
no, I'm talking Warhammer Online, the one that we played, 10 years ago or whatever it was now. It has an emulation server that's in alpha, because whoever's working on it hasn't worked out all the kinks, but it's still there and people are playing it.
That's nice. I wish there was one for Tabula Rasa. I don't know why, but I loved that game. Did you guys play it?
I never played it, but I heard people liked it.
It was quite good. It was, I think, one of the first MMOs I ever played that had what we have come to know as public quests. But since it was a PvP-centered game, it would basically just take a whole zone, and it would always be a shooting gallery. So if you were there to shoot the aliens falling out of the sky, your enemies might be too. So it was just always a lot of fighting, no matter who you were shooting. And I just loved that. I thought that was pretty cool. I liked the world too. It was well built. So I'd love to see somebody bring that back, but I don't think I've ever even heard of an emu for that game.
No, I don't think that game ever got really very popular either. It didn't last very long, I know that.
Nah, it didn't last too long. It was good, though. It's a shame.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of games out there that have closed that I'm sure people wouldn't mind going back and playing again.
So who do you guys think should be responsible for that kind of thing? Should companies be obligated to do something about the fact that players have bought the game I do. I definitely do. I don't cry.
I don't think so when it's actually running, but yeah, when it closes down, it should be.
The thing is, though, is that it's marketed as a service to begin with. You're only, if you read the terms of service and whatever, which nobody does. I haven't either. I just know enough about it to know that that's the way they word it.
It might be, but it's still unusual for a gamer to not be able to play any of their old games.
That's been a source of contention for as long as MMOs have existed.
Yeah.
In the event that they decide... I mean, it's the same thing with Steam. All your Steam games, if Steam shut down tomorrow and decided to not give a shit, we're all out hundreds of games. With no sort of... I mean, that's the kind of thing where a class action lawsuit comes into play.
Yes.
But... if it was to go down that way, they really don't technically have a responsibility to give us all those games.
Oh, but they'd be in bad shape if they didn't.
Right.
So.
But I mean, if they were closing down, how much would they really care anyway?
Oh, I don't know that Valve would do anything, but the many game creators would not benefit at all from letting Steam just shut down and letting games be lost. I don't think that would ever happen.
Yeah, because they monopolize the market, basically. So everyone that plays on PC gets their games there. I mean, there are other sources to get them from, but a lot of times they're still Steam keys.
I don't think that's a possibility. I think even if Steam shuts down, those developers will make their games usable outside of Steam. There are very few that actually require the Steam platform. It's not like it's a Steam game, so to speak. There's definitely a possibility for them to.
Well, I mean, if you look at Humble, a lot of times when they give you a Steam key, they'll also give you the DRM free copy of it, which you would be able to play. So they could, I mean, it's there, the option is there, but if you buy anything off Steam, you don't get that DRM free copy. So technically all the stuff that's on your hard drive, without it logging into Steam, you can't just go and click the launcher and expect it to launch.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean. That's just DRM. You don't require Steam to literally play those. Steam is used as DRM, essentially.
The problem is with Steam, though, you don't have all of those games on your hard drive to crack if it eventually goes down. You know what I mean?
No, I think the devs would make them available is what I'm saying.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's just DRM. It's not like, oh, the games are now broken. That's not true at all.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, if Steam disappeared, there are going to be a lot of hoops you'd have to jump through to make sure that you got all of those games down onto your hard drive and had them be playable without having the DRM portion of it. Because, like I said, if you were to go and uninstall Steam right now and then go double-click on any of the executables that are installed on your computer, they wouldn't work.
Of course.
So there would have to be a way to unlock them, which developers would be able to essentially give you that permission, but
yeah,
that's something that would be a big issue if it ever happened.
Yeah, that would be a big deal if Steam shut down for lots of reasons.
Yes.
That'd be a pretty big
anarchy, rioting in the streets. What's his name?
What
Gabe Newell. Fucking effigies everywhere.
We love him and we hate him, but I think we mostly love him.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think then of? Did either of you ever subscribe to GameTap? I remember having a subscription to GameTap so I could play all the old Sega games.
I've never heard of that one.
It's still around, but I don't think it's called GameTap anymore. But basically,
GameFly. That was the one where it was
not GameFly.
Netflix.
That's like the Netflix. Yeah. This was a game rental service, but it was like you paid $2 a month for access to thousands of old games, and you would just stream the games from their servers to your computer. So if you wanted to play Sonic or whatever, Rad Racer, I mean, all those games were on there, and they offered it as a service. And this was really old. This was early 2000s, I think. The service is still there. Sony, I believe, owns it now. I don't know what it's called, but the idea was really simple. All these developers, especially the big ones like Nintendo and Sega and PlayStation, have these huge back catalogs of games from systems that nobody owns, can't buy, and they wanted to make them available to those same gamers. It wasn't really a service for new players, although I'm sure they got many new ones. And you just paid I think it was $5 a month. It was really cheap. And you just downloaded the client, and then you could surf this library with all of your old favorite games. Now, Nintendo didn't participate. It was largely like Sega, but they had a huge catalog. And so that's one way that gamers have had access to old games. Now, you see things like either Baldur's Gate is being sold, in the App Store for $15, or Final Fantasy, or you get a situation where fans or some organization have kept these old games, they've uploaded it to their sites, they've gotten themselves sued for copyright infringement, and these companies will deny the service entirely. They'll say, it's our game, we don't care if you're a historian and you're trying to research the game, you've got to buy it from us or not have it at all. I think that's a problem. What if books were like that?
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I think what is the public domain rule? 50 years?
50
For
years,
games?
yeah.
No, not for games, but just in
For
general.
copyright in general, yeah, 50 years.
So 50 years for games seems a little excessive, considering each new generation is 6 to 7 years. So
Yeah, that's where I think it's wrong, and that, modern legislation hasn't caught up to, where the technology is now. It made sense for books because books are always going to be the same. They're never going to change. But for a game,
10 years.
10 years is a huge time. You're not going to be on the same hardware. I think they didn't expect this when those laws were made either, VHS laws about pirating and that kind of stuff. They could never expect right now that we'd be streaming services, and TV and all that kind of stuff. That never would have come across their minds, and yet the legislation hasn't changed to match that just yet.
Well, and it is shifting. I talked about it last episode a little bit. Origin, for example, started up that subscription plan, and it's $5 a month, and you get to access their catalog. Well, it's not their full catalog; it's just whatever games that they are allowing at that particular time.
Exactly.
But you can still play Battlefield or Dragon Age Inquisition for that $5, and maybe within a month you might actually be able to beat one of those games or get your fill and then unsubscribe or whatever. Or if there's games on there that you think, where you're going to want to subscribe for multiple months, that's possible. And I asked in the last show whether or not, something like that coming to Steam could be something that might happen in the future. And it is possible, and it would be kind of along these same lines, where it's a subscription service, you pay $20 a month or whatever, and you have access to a large chunk of their catalog.
Yeah.
Maybe not brand new games, but, a bunch of others.
Yeah. So there's a lot of problems in there. And I guess why I care about it, at least, is because I do think that there's a real risk of games disappearing. That's a real risk. I know people think that's so unlikely. But just take the MMOs we were just talking about. They basically no longer exist, only in name. Nobody can go back and play them. Nobody can go back and research and review them and talk about them and put them, on the map. They're gone.
Well, the problem with MMOs, though, too, is that without a social, environment, they're not the same experience. So even if you could go back and, say, play Tabula Rasa, like you mentioned, if you could go back and just play it, single player to an extent, just to be able to review it or look at it, take another look at it, whatever, it wouldn't be the same because there wouldn't be that social aspect, which is what kind of makes MMOs.
That's true, as far as experience.
I think a lot of the issue comes down to IP, though, and just how rigidly a lot of these companies hold on to them. Even if they're not doing anything at all with an IP and have no intention to, they will still hold on to that for dear life.
Yeah.
Because that's what's worth the money, apparently. It's not the game that's worth money, it's the IP itself.
Yeah, I think that's true. I still think there's some value to Izzy's point of
most definitely
having access to those games. It's true for MMOs, It wouldn't be the same.
That's where I think the laws need to be changed. Right now, if you're not contesting someone who's abusing your IP, then it gets completely overwritten that anyone can then use it or something like that. I'm not using the law terms correctly here because I'm a noob. So
what?
Therefore,
you're a lawyer. What's going on?
No. Therefore, anytime someone, uses their IP, they have to aggressively attack that to keep their IP. This is where the legislation could change. Just make it so, old games could still be used, but your IP is still yours to use and abuse in the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you want to attack newer IPs that try and use that, you still have the right to.
Well, that's the thing with copyright in general and the way that the market has shifted from, physical copies to digital libraries. If you still have a Nintendo and all the games, theoretically you can play them whenever you want, provided that your console is still working. If your console doesn't work, good luck getting a new one because they're few and far between these days. Same goes for any other console that's 20 plus years old. If you don't have your original, you're likely not going to get another. They do sell some emulation. I've seen a couple other different types that will actually play multiple different consoles games.
There's quite a few out there.
There's a market for it. I mean, I have a buddy that's made it his mission to collect every single original Nintendo game and is down to like a handful that he doesn't have.
Yeah, it's not hard for Nintendo. There's a couple of good emus out there for Nintendo, and huge, and especially the most popular games, and they are fine. They run exactly as you remember, and
I've used a few emulators.
They're nice.
They're completely illegal, though, aren't they?
Not the console emulation that we're talking about. They sell them all over the place, and it's just a little box that has the inputs to where you can plug in the original controllers. And you
it's
can
the
plug
emulation of the game.
The ROMs are what have always been the illegal part, yes. And that's only when speaking about downloading an emulator and downloading ROMs and using them, although you can still find them everywhere. Pretty much any game that you're worried about disappearing at this point, I don't think will, because they're already out there on the internet and you can get them. The legality of it is the problem.
So old games aren't going anywhere. They were made on physical media, and that stuff's like in museums. They're not going anywhere. The real risk only exists for modern games, which are grossly digital. I mean, even if you go to the store and get a copy of a game, they didn't intend for you to do that. They expect you to download it and play it on your machine. But if you have a company that's sort of super heavy-handed on DRM, your download of that game can stop working tomorrow because they felt like it. For two reasons. It's digital, but also companies have become a lot more aggressive with turning games from a product to a service, even games that aren't a service. So, like, you can argue that an MMO is genuinely a service, but you can't argue that for a game that's like Axiom Verge, right? Or
this has been getting in legal areas now. I think it was Sweden that overruled that case of games being a service. And
just the big European case about they were trying to get DRM removed. That's the last case I read in Europe.
It might have been that, yeah. And yeah, they won that case against the game companies.
What did they win? Just
the fact that games are a product, and this is what it was. No, this was for around when they were trying to stop a lot of the used sale markets and that kind of stuff. And even this is actually why Steam changed recently for, allowing or might allow you to sell your own games as well. Because I think it was in Sweden, one of those countries, they actually said that these games are a product and their license and their, that code belongs to the person who bought it, and they can trade it as freely as they want because it's a product.
That's right.
So that's why in the future Steam might actually allow you to sell your games too.
Because they're going to have to.
Yeah, if they have to abide by that country's legislation, and if they want to sell there. Yeah.
I think that's a huge one.
That is. Well, because a lot of games aren't a service. Like, you just can't get away with that anymore. Like, the old SimCity, that didn't need to be like it was. That's not a service. It's a game. It's a product. But where it becomes a bit harder to determine is when you've got these multiplayer-focused games, like, say, your Call of Duties. Is that a service or is that a product? Because they're running servers for you to play on.
Yeah.
But that depends. Because actually, the last time Call of Duty was where they were running a server for you, or
it's peer-to-peer now.
It's all peer-to-peer now, and so technically there are no servers. They don't have any extra upkeep for that. So I don't see why you shouldn't be able to play that 30 years from now, provided that there are people there to play with.
No, that's very true. I just mean some of those
Yeah.
multiplayer-focused games.
League of Legends is a good example. Like, if they shut down...
There's no single-player mode, though. Like, those games that have single-player and multiplayer.
Right. Well, in that case, there's... it's more of a product. In the case of League of Legends, MMOs, other games like that are online only and multiplayer-focused, it is basically a service, because eventually, if they shut down, you're out the money that you spent on skins and anything else.
And that is the legal definition they've made so far with a lot of the court cases. The ESA was wanting to have all games available to people once they have shut down, but the ruling was that a single-player game with multiplayer, yes, fine, emulate, crack, create those servers yourself, but for an MMO, it is still not allowed.
I think there's a lot of room to argue in the courts that an MMO is not a service. I think League of Legends and games like it come closer to being a service than the typical MMO, which you do pay an upfront box fee for.
Yes.
And the rest of the fees are ostensibly for them running the servers. There's no reason that when they decide to stop running the servers, that you shouldn't still have access to your game.
I agree with that as well, but it's complicated. I think it's more along the lines of you don't actually own the game, but you do in a part own your character and the items contained. Like there's been a few court cases where people have actually been allowed to sell their items on their character when the game companies didn't want them to, because those items were officially theirs. You know what I mean? The game mightn't have been theirs, but those items themselves were. So there is, legality there that we do own a part of them. Maybe not the whole thing, but a part. But
well, that could go away though. Remember, Landmark made players sign a contract that said you own nothing, including the things you create that you can sell in our store when we have it. You don't own that either, and if we want to take it from you, we can do that. And I wrote about that. It was almost a year and a half.
A lot of those
like that.
terms of service,
they can write
though,
these kinds of things in the terms of service. They can,
but even in the terms of service, they make allowances for certain countries' special legislation and laws and that kind of stuff. They can't overrule different countries' laws. They're just writing it on a basis of, say, a service in the United States. But other countries' laws and legislations can overrule that, and they have.
And another way to look at it, too, though, is that in the event that an MMO or League of Legends or games like that we're saying are kind of more of a service, if they were to close down at some point, the likelihood is because nobody's playing it. So you're probably not playing it either and probably don't care that you're losing out on whatever it is anyway. For instance, an MMO that you played, say, for 5 or 6 years, put a lot of time into, earned a lot of stuff, had a lot of crap on your account, but then say you don't like the game anymore, you're never going to go back and play it again, and then it shuts down, you're not really out anything because you already stopped playing it anyway. And I think that's where they get off on.
Should I be able to sell my characters in?
Well, if they shut the game down, then it doesn't really matter.
Well, I think there should be these MMOs should be coming back as just a single player mode that you can run your character around in. Still enjoy the quests and content, but that's it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd settle for that. But sometimes that's all I want anyway when I'm remembering my old games. I just want to be there again.
The likelihood of you actually going back and playing a game like that in single-player mode and actually wanting to put time into it is slim to none, though. Because likely you've moved on from that anyway.
Maybe,
I would say that's true.
But they should still allow you.
Well, the thing is, how can they be expected to run a server when no one is playing it is no longer lucrative? They're just throwing their money away.
No, it's easier than ever now to set up services like that because servers auto-manage. You can just have it only turn on when somebody's on. This isn't costing anybody. It's becoming more free as time goes on. So, yeah, maybe today it's not as free as it will be next year, but this is I think what you're charging players the monthly subscription for. You've got them to buy your box. And now you can shut down your server, but you've been collecting these fees. You should feel an obligation to your players, to be honest.
You should, but then at the same time, like I said, every company's got a bottom line, and they know what that bottom line is. They know that they need these many subscribers to maintain the game at that level. So if it dips below that, then at that point they're losing money. So why should they be required to keep that going if nobody's playing?
Then it's a bad model. That's just exploiting players anyway. If your game can't work unless you have 1 million of them, that's terrible.
That's been the model for.
It has been the model. It's an awful.
It doesn't
model.
make it any less wrong. Yeah.
Exactly. It's still wrong. So, I do hope, and I actually think newer MMOs will make more consideration for these things than the old ones did or were able to. But I think, from an ethical point of view, if I played WoW for 5 years without unsubscribing and paid all that money into it, I think the least you can do is put up a server when you shut down the actual game.
Or allow someone to do the emulated
Or allow
server.
someone else to do it. Exactly. Stop.
Now that's fine.
Use.
That I think is totally fine, because when they've proven, that Project 1999 has proven that people like that old school EverQuest feel, and there may only be 1,000 people playing on one server, but as long as they're happy, that's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
So in the case of other MMOs that have closed or are going to close in the future, people being able to make emulated servers for that, I don't see a problem with it, because it's no different than, like, say, Skyrim, where people are modding the shit out of it and adding in other portions of other Elder Scroll games into Skyrim so that people can continue to enjoy the game. That's good for the company. Even if they're not making more money off of it, they essentially are, because that one person showing it off to a friend might convince them to buy the game.
So from all of this, do you guys think that this is a big benefit to not even just us as gamers, who obviously benefits from being able to keep all of our games, but to the culture, right? Is it worth fighting for these copyright laws, worth fighting to archive old games, worth asking and fighting to get MMOs to always be available to us by whoever will make them available? Do you think there's a cultural benefit to giving people that kind of access to all the games that are being made?
Well, with them just disappearing, that doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, I really don't like the idea that digital games can these days pretty much disappear from history.
And the sad thing is, if you go and look on Steam, and you go look at any game that's got a multiplayer component, if it's more than a year old, it's likely that it's not being played unless it's Dota or Counter-Strike. So, there's a lot of them. That was why there was that whole Dead Multiplayer Games group that formed, and thousands of people joined it because of the fact that they had games in their library that they could no longer play because there was no one to play with. So they formed the group so that they could make weekends or whatever that, this weekend we're going to play this multiplayer game, and everybody joins in that has it, so that there's still a community there. But that's the problem with our over-inundation of so many titles and so many things. Like, you can only spend so much time playing games. There's only so many games that you're going to want to play, and there's only so many other people out there that are going to want to play those games. So some games die before they even start. Look at, like, Secret Ponchos. That game launched and it was already dead.
I think that's a really, really good point. It's related to this in a way too, because that was one of my biggest complaints last year, and one of the reasons I went with the Indie Box subscription, so I could stop worrying about thousands of games that were being advertised to me, and so I could play the hundreds of games I already have. Like, there was a time when I had, 3 cartridges. And I had to play the same 3 games all the time. And I don't remember hating that. But these days, I literally sit to play a game, and I'm just stunned at trying to pick something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
That's everyone's problem these days, because of the sales and everything else. Every time I turn around, I pick up 5 or 6 games at a time, and then play one of them through, and the other ones get, piddled with, and that's the end of it. And then they sit in the backlog and collect dust. And then I go back to playing Diablo or League, which I've played for years.
I think that's a problem, too, when we talk about curation, because there are thousands of games on, for example, mobile, I'll never, ever even see. Not just because the app stores suck at making those games visible to you, but there's too many. There's just too many. So part of the curation crisis is actually making sure players can find the kinds of games they would buy without throwing 1,000 titles in their face. I would love to just open Steam and only see the latest real-time strategy games that aren't in my library that I would like. Just show me those. That's good enough for me. So maybe curation is also part of the solution to us not being overwhelmed.
Yeah, but who's going to curate those? Like, you're asking for a huge organizational thing.
Huge. I mean, look what Steam tried
That'd
to
be a
do
huge
with
cost
Itza.
as well.
Well, I
don't
think
think
that's why
that's
Steam
feasible.
tried to go the free route with the curator thing on Steam.
Yeah.
I think it's a step in the right direction, but I think it also shows the problem that you just mentioned, which is it's a humongous task.
Well, it can't be that huge if that archive exists. They took a ton of different titles and put them in one spot where anyone can go and play them at any point in time. We just need several more projects like that.
Yeah, but there are far fewer games for archive.org to go through than it is for us right now to go through Steam.
Yeah.
It's a way huger task.
Well, Steam itself has some issues with its storefront anyway that a lot of people have already complained about. Just because it is hard to find. Some titles you can't find unless you specifically search for them, because otherwise you're digging through pages and pages looking for it. So yeah,
Google Play Store has that problem. The App Store has that problem. Like it's like Ari said, it's no small task. But at the same time, I'm more likely to not buy a game on the App Store or Steam if I have to pick through 1,000 games I couldn't care less about first.
Well, and that's where I said you probably need to get like Google or somebody involved in that, in the fact that they can scan through your library and scan through your web history and everything else and kind of curate what would be. Maybe they just need to figure out a way to tap into our brains directly so that they can give you that curated list.
I don't think it'd be good if Google recommended games to me based on my searches. I might find games I didn't think could possibly be made.
True.
I mean that in a terrible way.
Swords, dick swinging fucking bros.
Yeah, I'd be getting like porn. Yeah.
Have you guys watched Parks and Rec?
No.
No.
It was a big show on one of the major networks at some point, but I just watched it on Netflix. It's a funny show. There's a lot of like Aziz Ansari and quite a few other pretty well-known comedians are in it. And in one of the later seasons, there was this company that they were basically modeled after Google that moved into the whole show takes place in Indiana. So they moved into this little podunk town and basically provided free internet for the entirety of that state or that area, whatever it was. But nobody read the terms of service, so basically they were just spying through everyone's personal information, all of their search history, everything. And then they created these devices that look kind of like just pieces of glass with like holographic images that pop up off of it. It was really cool looking, but obviously the technology does not exist just yet. But everyone basically had one of their phones and was connected to their internet, and so everything they were doing was being monitored, and because they didn't read the terms of service, they did all of that and could use it however they wanted. So they had like drones coming to people's houses and delivering them things that like they didn't order, but just based on what they they like liked and stuff.
So would you
it
guys
got ridiculous.
like Steam to introduce a service like that?
No, but that was probably the only way that you're going to get what you want, where it's going to show you only the games that you want and nothing that you don't care about.
I mean, there's some hazard in that, true, but I don't know. You're right. We'd need a really smart, not just search engine. I think there's value in curation. I think the developers are starting to realize that the smaller their communities are, it's actually better for them and their games. Right? They get to actually put out quality content.
It's better to have like 10 avid fans than 100, flippant ones.
It is, because they're harder to satisfy the more people there are. And I think you said it earlier, Ari, part of E's success is its niche. It's the whole of E's success, the whole of it. Right?
I said that, but yeah, that's why I think that we've already said it, and it's the proof is in the pudding that all of the new MMOs that are being developed that were kickstarted and things like that are all niche MMOs because they've figured that out, that a smaller audience that's focused is better for the community.
Yeah, it is better. I don't know how niche, like what the threshold number is for MMOs before they're just like unsustainable, but I suspect that ratio is getting better in favor of MMOs because technology is getting cheaper and better. But still, I think MMOs need way more than, Guacamelee or Skyrim, right? Skyrim can be a pretty popular, wonderful game for 10,000 players.
I'd argue you could sustain an MMO off 10,000 players. You might not get back all of your initial investment, but over the course of time, if you're charging a subscription, you would get back your money.
I think you're right. I don't think people are interested in that because, I don't know, that gets tricky for MMOs, right? You have players, they're spread out in different time zones, and you have to have enough people online at any time to make it work. I think it gets tricky for MMOs, but I do think you're right. So that's tougher not to crack. I think we all agree, though, that not letting our games disappear and making them accessible, even if it has to be for free, is probably better than letting them disappear or just rot in somebody's copyright closet or IP closet. I think all that's nonsense.
It's funny, while I agree with that, I really don't care, though.
Here
I'm
she
so
goes.
I'm
Always
so in the
uncaring
What?
killer.
No, I'm just more in the cult of new. I like new games, searching out new games, getting new experiences, that kind of stuff. I love the stuff I have played, but I don't care for reliving it, if that makes sense.
I'm more in it for the collector's point, from the collector's point of view, in that, like, I bought a collection of Genesis games on PS3 because I wanted to relive some of those experiences that I no longer have because I no longer have a Genesis, I no longer have any of the cartridges, and going and trying to find them. Being a collector of physical media is a lot more time-intensive and money-intensive than it is to be a collector of digital media. So if all those games are already semi-digitized, which I'm sure most, if not all, are from those older eras, then being able to collect them and have them all on one computer, so you have your whole collection, even if it's virtual, on that computer is fine. Because, I remember having an issue with, like, CDs. I used to buy CDs all the time. I had a huge collection of CDs. And then at some point we all kind of switched over to digital music, and at first it was like, man, fuck that. I spent all this money and all this time collecting all these CDs, and now it's just all digital, and I can't show off all my CD, cases and all that. But then after a while, it was like, yeah, why do I even care? Like, fuck the CD cases, throw them away. All of my music's in one spot on one computer, and it's great. So I've embraced the digital media age. Now I just want to be able to collect all of those old games and have them here just for if I feel like playing them. Even if I don't play them and they just collect dust, I still am with you that I would hope that they would eventually be free, and I could just download them at my leisure.
See, I used to be like that, but then I realized I don't ever play them.
Well, here's the thing. The more games you buy, the more you have to spread out your time to ever play any of those games when you feel like it. But that's also not the point. We shouldn't have to choose. Sometimes I want to play F-Zero. It's nice to download the emulator and just turn it on and love that game, and not necessarily because I want to relive an experience or because I want something new or old, but because it's a fun game. And when do you ever stop liking a game you enjoy? You don't. So why shouldn't I always have that choice if I bought it?
Yeah, that's my thing, is like, especially with like consoles, the way they've switched generations and there's no backwards compatibility, although some are kind of trying with like Xbox trying to do it with their 360 titles and whatever. But, if I own a PS4, I should be able to play any PlayStation game ever made. But you can't. And that frustrates the shit out of me, especially because I paid money I owned every PlayStation. I should be able to get all the games that I ever owned at one point and put them on my system. Now, granted, being able to prove that you paid for that at some point is basically impossible unless you still own the disc, which I do not. So that's where the issue lies. But if they're all free, it doesn't matter. But every single time, all that happens is that they start doing reissues or allowing you to buy classic versions and download them, but you still got to pay money for them. And it's like, well, I already paid for that. Why should I have to pay for it again?
So here's actually a good example where Blizzard is kind of a good model. If you have a Battle.net account and you have if you have a Battle.net account and you've bought a game for it, any Blizzard game, they will just let you download all their old games.
Really? Because I have Warcraft 3 sitting in a box.
If
so I could go down.
For Warcraft, actually, I think the old Warcrafts are free, but for the more recent games, like I don't think Warcraft 3 is in there.
They have Diablo 2, and they have StarCraft 1, and they have Warcraft 3 on their store site.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you have a game that came with a key from Blizzard and you bought it, if you go to your Battle.net account, you can download games like Rock and Roll Racers or whatever that was called. The RPG that they made, these are like their old 90s games, but they don't charge you for them is the point. If you have a Blizzard game, you can play the ancient games for free. They don't charge you.
I'm looking at it right now, and under their Classics section, there's Warcraft 3.
Classics, that should be it.
Warcraft 3, Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, StarCraft Anthology, Diablo 2, and the Lord of Destruction expansion. Now, they're charging $10 for all except for the StarCraft Anthology, which is just the original plus Brood War. That one's $15. Now, I have Warcraft 3 sitting in a box right now that I could go pull out. It has a CD key on it. So you're telling me I could somehow enter that or redeem a code here, and that would give me access to Warcraft 3?
Yeah, go into your Battle.net account, and you can enter all of your old keys and throw the CDs away.
Nice. Now, see, yeah, that's something I've asked for a long time. I didn't realize that you could do it.
I think Blizzard is the only company I've been a customer of that does that. But not just that, the older games, the pre-Warcraft games, you can download those for free.
So like Lost Vikings and stuff like that?
Lost Vikings is one, yes.
I don't have that, but...
You will when you log into your Battle.net account. So that's good. I think they're a good example. They rarely get to be a good example, but I think that this is one where they are. I think if you have all the old PlayStations, or even just have the latest and have bought any games for it, don't be assholes. Let your customers play games. They're shelling out a lot of money for your new games. You're asking them to throw away their old ones. Just give them access to it. I think these companies really get on the wrong side of this sometimes.
So I think we agree that what do we agree on? Like 10 years? Like if a game's 10 years old, it should be free to download?
I don't know. No, 10 years is too soon. I'm definitely not of the mind that developers should start giving their games away just because they're not new. But if you made a game in 1980, if you made a game even in 1990, and you're charging people money, if you made a game in 2000, actually, I do think 15 years is probably a long time.
So I would argue that even 10 years is long enough to where you can't buy the game anywhere anymore unless they put it somewhere digitally.
Wait, what do you think, Ari?
I don't know, 20 years, I'd say.
20 years. And then no more charging money.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Well, it's hard. If they're actually going through the effort of making it playable on new hardware, then yeah, I think they should be entitled to some more money. Minimal, maybe $5 ask for it, because they are still changing code around to make it playable, like, a PS2 game on a PS4. That still takes a little bit of effort on their part. Still takes employees to get that done. But if they can't do that, just chuck the code up on some random website, so someone else can do it for you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Then it would be free.
I agree with that.
Well, I mean, in all actuality, I think all the way up to like PS2 even, there's already ROMs on the internet you can download and you can play. So, in actuality, you can get any of those games that we've talked about for free that are older. It's just there's legal issues there. I mean, I don't think that anybody's going to be knocking your door down trying to bust you for downloading ROMs, but it still technically is not legal. They should just make it legal.
Yeah. Or the companies should make a good faith policy that since you love our game, we'll let you keep playing it. You know, we're not going to sue you. So, a lot of work to be done on that front. I think we're going to hear a lot more this year about these issues, about curation and archiving and developers making their libraries available when they're too old. I think last year there was a lot more talk about it. I think this year there will be even more. It's important. As a gamer, I don't like the idea at all that a developer could go under or go away, and because of that, you lose those games. I think that's bad. They should allow other people to take care of it if they won't. That's the digital frontier for this month. Archive.org, for anybody who doesn't know about it, very nice, well-organized site that has a bunch of cool old arcade games on there, and console games, actually. So, check it out.
Oh, there's quite a few good places. Like, I know the old XCOM's being reworked and redesigned with new content. The old Command & Conquers and Red Alerts are being done by someone as well.
Yeah.
Heaps of games are out there for free, if you just look for them.
All right, so yeah, as usual, questions, comments, leave them below, and we will be back next week with something new. That does it for this week's edition of Couch Potatoes. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you'll continue to join us. Couch Potatoes can be found on Twitter at Couch Potatoes, and on Anook at anook.com/blog/couch-potatoes. Music credits, other places you can find us, and pertinent links discussed on the show can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening. We're going to get back to gaming now, so we'll see you next week.